I call to order the February meeting of the Open Source Voting System Technical Advisory Committee of the San Francisco Elections Commission. Today is Thursday, February 14th, 2019, and the time is now 6:04 p.m. I am the chair, Chris Giordano. Secretary Walker, can you take the roll?
Member Giordano.
Here.
Vice Chair, I'm sorry, President or Chair Giordano. Vice Chair Kuto.
Here? Kuto.
Sorry, Kuto.
Don't worry.
Member Hayes.
Hey, and I'm here.
This is a great test. And it's in perpetuity. Member Phillips.
Present. Yeah.
And Member Wasson. You have a quorum with all members present. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, and we have a new secretary today, Secretary William Walker. Thank you for being here and helping us out. Did you want to say anything, or you don't have to?
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next item.
General public comment. And do I read the entire?
Usually we've been reading the entire description.
Public comment on any issue within the committee's general jurisdiction that is not covered by another item on this agenda.
Any members of the public?
Yes, Brent Turner with California Association of Voting Officials. Just wanted to mention that we submitted a statement regarding open source language for inclusion in what's called the Little Hoover report. It's coming up in the next week or so. I'm hoping to be up in Sacramento. What we've seen in front of the Little Hoover Commission is a lot of folks from Verified Voting and other what they call good governance organizations, and the outflow of their efforts is the omission of open source language, similar to what's happened with the bill HR 1 at the federal level. They talk about audits and they talk about paper ballots, but they omit the open source language that the California Association of Voting Officials thinks is necessarily included for proper voting systems. So I just wanted to mention that we did send a letter to the Little Hoover Commission. We have sent letters to all the appropriate office holders regarding HR 1. We're pushing very hard on the national and the state level to make sure that when we talk about election system security, that the open source software language is not omitted from the conversation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. Next item.
Open source voting project plan. This is a discussion item and possible action regarding the plan for the open source voting system project.
Okay, so this item was more of a placeholder in case we could have a representative of the Department of Technology. And I did send an email to Director Jarrell on Monday asking her if she would be able to be here. Or, and I also said we were really hoping that the new technical lead, Sean Roberts, could be here. And she said that they wouldn't be able to have anyone here today. And I guess I'm looking to see what she wrote here. It says she's going to have more to talk about next month. But I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping we could meet with them, but it just didn't happen. So, I mean, we can still talk about the plan they presented last month, or that we had last month, but you don't need to.
Is that for the two new staff people fully on board and started work?
Well, yeah, so what we learned at the last meeting is that Sean was hired in December. I had asked in December if he was hired, and she had said yes. And then the other person who was the communications person, she told us last month that he actually declined the job offer. So she's looking to find another way to fill that role.
Got it.
So let's keep that project on track.
Okay, and then is it possible to provide portion of us to be available to Sean versus waiting another month?
Well,
At least the,
yeah, anything's possible. I mean, as long as it doesn't involve the majority of members, or we could have a special meeting. But sure, I'll look into that.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's sooner rather than later. Maybe we'll do.
Can you clarify who you said that had declined the job offer? Was it the other person aside from the project manager? Or was it the project manager himself?
Well, sure. The person's name was it Michael Kelly?
Okay,
I
yeah.
can't remember.
Right, okay. It was not Sean, it was the other person.
Yeah, and I think the term she was using was, and he was the halftime person.
Okay, yeah.
The contractor. And
Right.
She may have been calling him the project manager, but she's been calling Sean Roberts the technical lead.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a
Okay, yeah.
full-time
Yeah.
position.
Gotcha. Yeah, now I was confused because you said something about someone having declined the position, and a friend of mine who works in DT said that he actually met Sean and that Sean had started, so I was
Yeah, no,
confused by
Sean-
your statement there, but you were talking about the other guy.
As far as I know, Sean is still.
Gotcha.
I just haven't had a chance. I haven't met him personally. Yeah, did anyone, I know you had talked about wanting to reach out to him.
Yeah, I have not done so because I'd like to make sure that I wasn't violating any
Protocols?
Protocols, yes, you know, by kind of zipping through the non-structured hierarchy in that way.
Yeah. Do you recognize this name?
No, I've never read it.
Okay. All right, let's take public comment on this item.
Brent Turner from California Association of Voting Officials. The only thing that raises any concern is that we have to be conscious that this work is not like a regular project because of the national security ramifications attached to this particular project. It would be great if we had some specified timelines, some benchmarks being put in place, and of course, we do want to meet Sean, and we're all waiting for that, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. Well, I should also mention, I don't know if I said this at the last meeting, but Director Jarrell did put in, I think it was a $3 million budget request into Kuwait for the next fiscal year. And she had also said that Sean is working on a report for February that is basically surveying whatever open source software is out there related to voting systems. And I did tell Director Jarrell in my email that that's something we've been doing research on this past year and a half, so it'd be nice if you talked to us before that. Okay, anything else before we move on?
Can I just introduce myself really quick?
Oh, sure, we just called public comment, but we can reopen public comment. So,
Okay, I'm Nina, I'm a reporter at the UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism. I'm working on a story about open source voting. I did bring some audio recording equipment. Is it okay if I use that for my own purposes?
of course, and we're also recording it
Okay,
ourselves too.
fabulous, thank you.
And yeah, I actually had a chance to meet Nina a couple weeks ago and we talked.
Yeah.
So she's going to be doing the story. So anything else? Okay, next item.
Approval of minutes from the previous meeting of this committee. Discussion and possible action of approve minutes for the January 10th, 2019 meeting.
So I have a couple of corrections. In member reports, item number 6, OSCON should be
Oh, yeah.
OSCON, all caps.
Where's that?
Item number 6 on
Oh,
page 2.
you know, actually,
First sentence.
actually, this version here is not the same that was published on the website, because this is before I had done the
Oh.
edits. So, I'm not sure how we should do this.
We can just defer to the next meeting probably.
Yeah, that might be easiest. But if people want to make comments now, they can.
Is
People
that
can make
his-
comments. I could also just print that right now if that's what's posted to the website. This wasn't what was posted to the website. I was just trying to use the format of.
Oh,
So what's on the website is not this, it's what you posted. I can go print that.
Yeah,
I
actually,
assumed
that's.
they were the same.
Yeah, actually, maybe what we could do is, we can continue this agenda item at the end of the meeting.
Yep.
And then during one of the items, William and Secretary Walker can make some printouts.
Yeah, there are a couple of other things, and
Yeah.
we'll wait.
Yeah, okay, and then Secretary Walker, when you do that, you could just print from the browser, and then the
Yeah.
format should be good enough.
Great.
Um,
My apologies.
Oh, it's no problem. We are gonna be coming back to this, but I should probably just take public comment to be sure. Would anyone like to make a public comment? No. Okay, seeing none. So as I said, we're gonna be continuing this until later in the meeting, so next item.
Item number 5, discussion and possible action regarding administrative issues, including but not limited to attendance at elections commission meetings by committee members, the committee website, and the committee's written reports to the commission. And I was gonna say, this is probably the best item for me to go down and get the minutes,
Well-
if you want.
Well, this is gonna be a shorter item, so I
Okay.
think, I would say maybe number 8 would be good for that.
Okay, great.
But,
Sure.
and actually, it would probably be good for you to be here for this one. So the things we need to do are just decide on the date of the next meeting. And normally we've been doing the second Thursday of each month.
Yeah, so it'll be March 14th, sorry, because March is gonna be exactly the same as February this year.
Right. And does that work for people? I know you had
Works for
said
me.
you might not be able to be on.
I won't be here on the 14th.
Okay.
I have been summoned to Pittsburgh.
How about others?
Works for me.
Okay, great, so let's stick with that, and then we'll, barring any unforeseen issues, we'll stick with that. And then, and how about someone attending the next commission meeting, which is next Wednesday?
I think I signed up for that already.
Okay,
At
good.
least it's in item number 5 in the minutes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, on the last minutes now, the draft minutes. Okay, that's great.
And so we should talk for a moment about, a short list of topics to make sure that gets covered in that report.
Okay. Does anyone have any suggestions for Tony?
Because we can talk about the engineering work you guys have been doing, we can talk about, I don't want to raise the issue yet of, meeting with the IT department, but that's clearly something that somebody will want to talk about at some point. So,
Well, normally we only talk about, it only has to go back like since the last report.
Right.
So you could, at the least, you could just talk about what we talked about today.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, all those things sound good.
I mean, could you just say that the committee is interested in meeting with the new project manager, and,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that's worth saying.
Yeah. That if we're gonna be an advisory committee, that would be a key.
Yeah. I think we can all agree with that. Okay, any other administrative issues that people can think of?
We had called a special meeting for late January and then we canceled it. So do we want to try that again, to have a special meeting for the?
Yeah, I was thinking we could talk about that during number 8.
Okay,
I
cool.
can give a report on that. Oh, and this is kind of, I guess this falls under number 5, but Brandon, it'd be good to have a bio from you for the website.
Okay.
And then also, if you want to decide whether you want to have an SF.gov email address,
Yeah, yeah.
and then you can just let me know on that stuff. Okay, let's take public comment on this item. Okay, seeing no comment. Let's see, anything else before we move on? Okay, let's do the next item.
Member reports, item 6. Member reports on committee-related activities not covered by another item on this agenda, including but not limited to the last Elections Commission meeting, Department of Elections progress, research findings, conferences, and news reports.
Okay, would anyone like to start? And you could exclude stuff related to number 8, I think.
I can start.
Okay.
I received an email from the Secretary of State. It's on the notices to county election officials that has some news in it on recent legislation. We might have discussed it before. One is just recently Assembly Bill 2125 authorizes the use of risk limiting audits beginning March 3, 2020 primary election. And the law is automatically repealed at the end of 2020, so January 21. So it allows counties to substitute risk limiting audits in lieu of the 1% tally. And it goes into a bunch of details, but basically they define ballot as the original paper ballot or voter verified paper audit trail, and it excludes scans, or other representation. So I know we had discussed that before. So it defines what risk limiting audit means. It's 95% chance of leading to a full manual tally. I'm not even sure exactly what that means, but it defines the risk amount required for the audit. And it says the Secretary of State, in consultation with recognized statistical experts, election verification and integrity stakeholders, voting system manufacturers, and local election officials shall adopt regulations to implement and administer it. So anyway, that was one news. They also mentioned, which we've discussed before, AB 1013 that requires counties to support remote accessible vote by mail systems, and San Francisco already has implemented that. The other thing is there was a mention for an August 29 notice saying there's $134 million in state funds for voting system modernization, 1.5 million for cybersecurity and associated needs, and 1.5 million in federal funds for polling place accessibility. So there's a pot of money available for the county election officials.
Okay. I also think I may have heard that LA counties had either just gotten a new part of their system certified, or maybe they submitted for recertification of an update. I'm not sure exactly. But I think
It's kind of amazing that it's such a black hole to me.
Yeah.
The whole certification process, I mean, if it's going to be open source, then everything should be open, including the certification. And I mean,
Yeah.
They should also, if it's open source, they should allow members of the public to scrutinize it as well.
Yeah. Oh, and just so people know, the email list that you're talking about, I think I'm on that same list, and that's something that anyone can sign up for. It's actually kind of a fun list to be on, because you'll get maybe like a few emails a week. Maybe.
No, it's like
one email a week.
a couple a month.
Yeah.
It's not very often. The only problem is that it's always a link to a PDF file that you have to download and
Well, sometimes there's a string of like 5 or 6 initiative ones. where
Oh,
it's-
yeah, so every time there's a ballot measure that's been submitted or it fails, then there's a notice of that, so I guess that's why it comes a couple
Yeah.
times a week.
On the average, yeah, so in that basically you can see all the official announcements that the Secretary of State is sending out, and it has things like the voting system meetings that take place in Sacramento.
Right, for example, they had one on the, Office of, what is it? Voting Systems Technology.
Advisory
their
committee.
Advisory committee, but they didn't really publish any details on it.
Yeah.
Can you circulate how to sign up for that, Chris?
Sure, yes. A couple of things I want to say is that, number one, I asked about the update on the next voting system that San Francisco is going to be using. And the contract with Dominion has not yet been submitted to the board, but that was...
Which board?
The Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
Because the contract needs to be approved by the board.
Got it.
So I'll let the committee know when I learn when this...
So does the Election Commission also vote to approve it?
In the past, we haven't, but I mean, there's no reason we can take any action that we like, I guess. But, and again, that was capped at 14 million in the RFP.
Is that for a 2-year period?
We don't know yet, the contract isn't public yet, so.
And it's not all that time critical, because the next San Francisco election is November, right?
Right. Yeah. But the commission is interested in talking about like the plans for voter education, because this is a new ballot layout.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be interested in it because we're going to want to integrate with it, right? And learn about its capabilities. Okay, and then the other thing is, I spoke with Trent Lang of the California Clean Money campaign, and he is working on a new state matching funds request like last year. And he's sort of talking with people to, like leaders in LA County and also in San Francisco to get language that would be acceptable to different people. And, probably in the same order of like maybe, I don't know, 10 million or so matching funds.
How does the procurement process work for that RFP? Like, who does technical diligence and that sort of stuff?
And which one?
On the RFP for the Dominion contract.
Yeah, so the way it's done, the way that all RFPs are done, which is they'll make a public RFP with like a date that's a deadline, and then I think the way it works is that there's a panel that decides, and they meet privately and they score the different bidders, and it's it's try to maybe like 3 to 5 people, but in this case there's only one bidder, so it would really just be up or down rather than a comparison.
And don't quote me on this, but I believe it's something. This was in the Civil Grand Jury report from last year. It's something like there are 3 commercial vendors that offer, or basically 3 commercial vendors that offer integrated voting systems, like what we need. And then there's like one of them like doesn't support ranked choice voting, and like one of them is based in Austin and Texas is a bathroom bill, so we can't do business with them. And so you're left with one. It's some sort of process of elimination like that.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, do we need to have an understanding of how that process works if we're going to be like advising essentially over time the RFP hopefully would be taking under, like taking our advice, we have to advise, like understand that process.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah.
And who would be like the people that we want to brief us on that process?
That do what
To brief us on that process
Oh.
and how it works.
Well, we've done a little bit of that before you're on the committee,
Okay.
but, and actually there's some documents in today's agenda packet with information about that. But like anyone, like you can do research, we can invite people to talk. We invited someone from ATF to talk about it.
Okay.
But it's a hard topic.
Yeah, for sure.
And we've also made statements about how the project should be divided up.
Yeah.
to do RFPs, but yeah, it's definitely a good topic.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and also, just to draw your attention to that, there are several packet items for this item, and Commissioner Bernholtz submitted a few emails that she had sent to the Elections Commission. I said that I would forward them on to our committee, and she knows people that work at 18F or people that have expertise in open source. So those emails have different resources.
Yeah, I was just thinking, yeah, 18F, but the person I know best in the government works for the other one.
Oh, yes, I know what you mean.
Digital services?
Yeah,
Yes.
digital service, yeah.
So one of the...
That's Josh Simmons, do you know him?
Oh, yeah. Well, I know Chris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then one of the emails says that someone with an 18F, they have some kind of a grant where they can do pro bono work.
Yeah, I thought that bit of it was really interesting. Where, of course, at the time of this exchange, the government was shut down, but it sounds like they can do at least advisory work pro bono and for other government agencies, and that would be incredibly valuable. And that's definitely, I mean, I'm sure Lucy agrees, but that we definitely need that to happen.
Yeah.
Do we know if Sean has seen these emails?
Well, that's the thing. Until we talk to him, we can't really.
We don't know what he knows.
I mean, I could shoot an email to Linda or Director Jarrell.
Yeah.
So who is Lucy?
Sorry, the Commissioner Bernals.
She's a member of
She's the
Elections
newest
Commission?
member of the Elections Commission.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
she was.
Well,
She was
I mean,
appointed
her
like maybe
her
5 or 6
signature
months.
says Stanford University, but.
Yeah.
But she has an interesting background.
Yeah, she was appointed like a few months ago.
I want to say it was earlier than that, but she did have to get reappointed because her term.
Right, she was, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm kind of hogging up this item, but speaking of which, the Board of Supervisors voted to reappoint me this week on Tuesday.
Oh, cool,
Yay,
congratulations.
congratulations.
Yeah, so it went before the Rules Committee, and I still need to take the oath before I'm officially reappointed, but I'll be continuing with all of you.
Excellent.
So, Member Patel, I know you have some.
Yeah,
documents.
I see that we don't normally put changes to the recommendation document in this item, but I'll roll with it.
Yeah, let me explain that.
yeah.
Because I got your documents after the agenda had already been
Oh,
made,
you couldn't create an
I
agenda
couldn't
item
create an
because,
agenda
sorry for getting these so late.
So what we can do is you can maybe tell us about it and we could vote on it at the next meeting.
Oh, right, we're not even allowed to vote on them anyway. Yeah, no, you're right. I should get things to you sooner. So yeah, this is, just really quickly, this is what I alluded to at last month's meeting, that there was a paper that was published by some, what is it, like Coalition for Good Governance? I keep forgetting the name of the organization. The people that are suing Georgia over their election practices did a paper where they studied voters in Tennessee in the primary there in 2018 and have some, in my opinion, somewhat thin evidence, but it's still something that I think validates the notions that I've been advocating for earlier about how it's difficult for people to validate ballots that come out of ballot marking devices, and it's especially difficult when there's a lot of items. And they did some interesting experiments like standing in a polling place and observing how long voters look at the printout that comes out of the machine, but also like intercepting voters as they walk out of the polling place, like as an exit poll, but instead the exit poll is like, okay, here's 2 similar looking ballots. Which one of these did you actually just vote on like 10 seconds ago? And a disturbing percentage of people do not know the correct answer. And so it's a bit indirect and it's a bit thin for my tastes, but I wanted to throw it into the section where we discussed the pros and cons of like using ballot marking devices for everybody. And the second thing is that I also mentioned this last month. The state of South Carolina, as part of their election audit process, they publish CVRs for every vote in the state.
So electronic.
Yeah, so an electronic record of like every full ballot. So in San Francisco's process, you can't do that because ballot cards are separated and there's no way to like track card 1 and card 2 of the same voter together, or at least in the way that San Francisco processes them, there isn't. South Carolina somehow does this, or maybe they don't have multiple cards and they just have huge ballots or whatever. But they publish data that says like, you know, one vote had all these, one voter made all these selections, and of course they don't identify the voter because they can't, but you get complete CVRs with complete correlation. And so they publish that in some sort of obscure format that comes out of whatever election software they use. But that's a wealth of data, and it's actually been picked up a bit by the community. Like I found a guy who had a GitHub project where he reformatted that into like per county JSON blobs, so that you could download the data in a format that you would actually not want to kill yourself trying to use.
Can you give us an idea what the original format was?
I didn't look,
Okay.
but the author of this package was not very positive about it. I could look at it, I haven't looked. But he reformatted it and he's like, this is more friendly, use this. But then there's also been political scientists that, I found one political scientist at least, that did, I guess it's not really a paper, but it's like an academic poster, where he researched like correlations between voting behavior, like how much ticket splitting happened in this election, in the 2016 election, like between presidential and lower level offices. Is party preference, as revealed by people's actually votes for partisan candidates, does that correlate with like how people vote on ballot measures that raise taxes, for example? And according to him in South Carolina, the answer is no. But there's this poster that has like all these graphs like correlating people's partisan votes for different offices or partisan votes in ballot measures and all that kind of stuff, which is more than we could ever do here, but it's I think indicative of the kind of cool stuff that you can do if you like actually publish all your data, which I hope is something that we can also advocate for here.
So it seems like that's mainly for research purposes as opposed to, I don't know, auditing or something.
I mean, they publish it because they do an audit, but so it's like a byproduct of their audit process, and their audit process publishes like 15 things, and this is one of them. But this particular has been really useful for research purposes.
So on a related topic, the NIST voting standards group is working on a cast vote record standard format, although it's
Cool.
horribly complex verbose XML file. It's,
of course, it's NIST.
You know, like,
It's NIST. What else are they gonna do?
well, I don't know, they're into it.
They've been working on it for a while, right?
I think the cast vote record is relatively new, but
Okay.
it's like every selection is, you know, a pile of, you know, multiple XML lines, as opposed to what a simple format would be, like each selection has A, B, C, D, E, F, G letter for the choices that you make, and, you know, one column for each choice on the ballot. That's compact, easy to parse. But I think just getting the cast vote record accessible, once you do that, then the rest is easy, like you said. Okay, it was in an inconvenient format, so somebody made it easier, and I think that's what would happen. I do have a suggestion on your link here, just that you add some words that it's talking about voters verifying, you know, machine printed ballots. I mean, I didn't know what ballot verification meant, and I think you're saying that it's researching whether voters actually do verify their, you know,
Yes, so
voter verified printed ballots.
The actual sentence after my change would be as follows. It is difficult for voters to accurately verify their machine-printed ballot, especially when there are many contests in ballot. That's the existing text. Then it says, for example, in November 2016 elections, there were 52 contests, and then the sentence that I went after that says, the 2018 papers suggest voters struggle with much smaller ballots.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
When you read it in context, I was just looking at the insert, so I thought.
Yeah, I know, that's
So it's actually fine, that's, no need.
Yeah, I was actually worried for a second there, but because I also don't read the context. But it looks like I did do it there.
Okay.
But yeah, because of my terrible time management, we can't actually vote on this today, and that's all I got.
Yeah, and just for a reminder for everyone, if there's something in particular you'd like to discuss, try to notify me like a week before the meeting, and then if you have documents, you know, around the same time frame or on up until the meeting. Okay, let's take public comment on this item. And also members of the public, you're welcome to sit more closer if you like.
Great.
Okay, anybody?
Yes, my name is Brett Turner. I'm with California Association of Voting Officials. I have a few comments about the different reports. I think we need to make some stipulations, which I brought up early in this, after the initial formation of this group. And that is some stipulations like the VVPAT, that we know is what's known as a botched design. So that's a failure as a design. People should become familiar with how that came to pass. That was a David Dill accurate design that was initiated by a Dr. Rebecca Mercury, and Dr. Rebecca Mercury has filed formal objections with the National Science Foundation and others regarding the what she calls the bastardization of her design, and she wasn't given proper credit for the design and wasn't comfortable with its finality. The reason why that's relevant is because when we talk about the Coalition of Good Government and they're filing lawsuits, that again is David Dill. That again is a verified voting affiliate. So a lot of the groups that you run into in this space will be associated with David Dill and verified voting, because they're the people that have gotten all the grant monies in the space, the tens of millions of dollars that have been dedicated to making sure the United States has proper voting machines. And of course, we know we do not have proper voting machines. They're also the same folks that have been blocking the language of open source going into federal and state legislation. So they purport to be good governance people that you would think would be for open source. And if you really press them, David Dill, Barbara Simons, they will say, yes, they are for open source, but the problem is that their actions speak louder than words, and we have to recognize it's a large web of folks that do not want open source because they think it interferes with software selling shareholder interest. So this is the essence of the problem. A lot of these groups like Coalition of Good Government, they'll file the suit, but then operate as a placeholder and then collapse the lawsuit and make sure that nobody else has filled the space. We want to make note again of Rebecca Mercury. If anybody wants to contact her, she's glad to make comment for this commission about the random audit and Philip Stark's work. And we also want to make sure when we talk about proper systems that we give good attention to a ballot printing system, because that eliminates all voter intent issues. And voter intent issues are the real plague here and another form of Jim Crow. So if we allow the public to mark the ballot by hand, we're always going to have interpretation issues. Those are eliminated by a simple design, what we call the Deckert design. And I would also encourage everybody here to get real familiar with the work of Open Voting Consortium, as this whole project and this effort has been prompted by them starting in 2000. They're the pioneers of this work, Alan Deckert and another fellow, David Weber, and Dr. Johnson, who's now deceased. But a lot of this work has been worked on by hundreds of scientists worldwide, and we want to make sure that work is available to you folks so that you can be clear on some of these core elements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. Oh, by the way, Mr. Turner, did you mention HR 1 earlier?
Yes.
Yeah. So that, and those hearings were started on what day?
The HR1 hearings, they've been going on now for a few weeks
For a few weeks?
in different committees.
Okay. Yeah, and that, and just to repeat, that does not include open source, unfortunately. Okay, so, any other members of the public? Okay, are there any other things that anyone would like to mention for number 6 before we move on? Okay, next item.
Item number 7, voting system security. Discussion and possible action regarding security as it relates to voting systems and software generally.
Okay, so would anyone like to say anything on this topic?
So, I have a new project that's been behind schedule, so I have been set. I thought I could do something for today, but wasn't able to get it ahead of time. But I know what I want to do, and I would like to ask the committee members some suggestions on what kind of document to write or how to write it. So the basic principle is we can put files in a directory, or they could be inside of a zip archive or something similar, and we create a.
For which aspect?
Well, this is for digital signatures. So the idea is to cryptographically secure, what's the methodology that we would recommend to cryptographically secure our data. So what we want to do is take a collection of data and be able to verify that it hasn't been tampered with, and be able to add one or more digital signatures to authenticate it. And that can be packaged along with it. So there's a recommendation. We use the standard file for the the SHA 256 program. It's a standard shell that has a very simple format. I think you also have a Python script that does the same thing.
Part of our software.
Right, it's in our Git archive. So we already have that, and San Francisco uses it to a limited extent for their download area. But what they don't have is a digital signature. And there's a standard way to write a file that just contains a signature. And so I propose just using that simple format for adding a file that contains a digital signature. And it's essentially a digital signature of the SHA 256 hash file. And so that in turn signs all of the data. That's the sort of normal way that you sign a batch of data, is you sign the hash sums. And then other people could co-sign it, like you could have a Secretary of State add the same thing, kind of as a notarization of that. So I wanted to write a document, describing that. The other thing is I would recommend using a hardware-based key as opposed to, the usual method of storing it in a file on a computer somewhere. And I would recommend using an inexpensive key that's, $50 to $100, something of that order. So it's easy to add and easy to use. So I could include an example with instructions on how to install it and what software to use. I'd also recommend basing the method off available open source software that's standard. The other issue is I think the Voting Standards Committee are going to require FIPS certification for cryptographic hardware and software. And so the Open SSH is widely used software that's also FIPS certified. And some of these security devices, hardware security devices, are also FIPS certified. So there's one that's, I think the certified version is a little more expensive, maybe $75 or something like that. But if you'd like, I can write up instructions of how to use that device. But I guess what kind of document would we like to produce?
Well, so I have a couple questions. So for starters, the scope of this is, it's for signing data, basically not, this is not for the software or?
Well, you could, the same method applies to software, like you could have source code files signed the same way.
So you wanna have like a recommended way to basically sign like a directory? Is that essentially what you're?
Or a hierarchy, right.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we do containers, then I think there are some existing, Brandon, maybe you know more about, like what kind of signature methodologies are in common use. I know you can like sign Docker images and things like that, so, I don't know, maybe I should just ask you like what, can you comment on kind of what standards or conventions are being used now?
Yeah, so it's essentially just a blob, which is a tarball, and then people either use GPG detached signatures.
Yeah, that's what I'm proposing, is that
Yeah.
the formal word, well, GPG is an open source software program that can produce, I guess, it produces a standard format for cryptographic files. So it's not like PGP had its own like proprietary or format that it used, but GPG could use the official standards. It's I forgot the name of it. I can include that. But basically, the idea is to create detached signature files, and we have a file naming convention that we always know where to look and find the signature files and how to interpret them.
Something that I've seen that's I think interesting is Mozilla Firefox has recently been leveraging the work of what is it called? There's this work that Google and some other folks are doing about certificate authority authentication, and it all ends up
Oh, you
on a
mean
big ledger.
certificate transparency?
Yeah, certificate transparency. It ends up on this big replicated ledger, which is nice because it means that, like, if you publish a signature of some sort, it's sort of annoying because if that website goes down, or that where you're publishing the signing key, or if the website that's hosting the actual signature goes away, then you don't really have a record of what that used to be.
So, do you remember the name of, or what can I search?
I can send you a link if you email me, but it's Mozilla Firefox release signing certificate transparency. Those words should.
So you're saying Mozilla has been abusing the certificate transparency infrastructure to like replicate the release signatures around the world?
Yes.
That's pretty brilliant and kind of evil, but okay, sure.
Well, yeah, I mean,
why not? But yeah.
So what was it called, release signing?
yeah, Mozilla Firefox release signing certificate transparency, and the advantage is that it's like replicated.
So one of the issues that I haven't resolved is what to do about certificates. So just to sort of recap, if I'm digitally signing my work or my data, then I have a public key and a private key. So I need to tell everyone what the authentic public key is. So usually you get somebody else to sign your public key, who's a certificate authority that says, okay, this is a valid public key, and everything is kosher, and then people trust certificates. So if you're on a web browser and you use HTTPS, there's a certificate authority chain that says, oh, okay, this signature is valid for this website. But the thing is, that's only for signing website, HTTPS access. It doesn't work for anything else like legal data or legal signatures. So what some people do is that you self-sign your certificate and says, okay, I'm just signing it myself, and you have to trust this number, but then how do you trust that that's the correct one and distribute it? So I don't know if we should like have a simulated
Yeah, Adobe basically
certificate.
does that for the PDF signatures.
What's that?
Adobe basically does that for a signature on
Yeah.
a PDF document.
The thing that I really like about Mozilla's solution, essentially what Mozilla does is they create a new subdomain. So it's like the SHA hash that was generated, .releases.mozilla.org. And so they just basically bootstrapping off of the existing web technologies. And so you don't have a separate certificate chain, they're just using their existing. So like you imagine it'd be like electionsdata.sf.gov, but it'd be a SHA hash.electionsdata.sf.gov. And that ends up in the chain, and then you essentially trust off of that SHA hash.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Is
Okay,
this
so
the
that's
same
what
as the
it's-
idea you talked about earlier? or different?
That's
Or-
what Mozilla's
yeah.
doing under the covers, and then at the end of it, it means that you end up in the certificate transparency log, which is
Right.
a replicated ledger, which doesn't go away.
Because you're now like getting a certificate for that weird subdomain.
Yeah.
So that's
I love
something
it.
I still have to figure out is what we should recommend in terms of methodology or usage in terms of dealing with certificates and how to authenticate them or trust
Yeah.
them or validate them.
At a previous meeting, someone, and maybe it was you, brought up like a section of the California code around digital signatures where there's at least some state legislation around.
Right, but
Yes.
if the Secretary of State actually did issue certificates,
Yeah,
then
that would be great.
fine.
If there were- if there were
But
some
then-
kind of
but,
government PKI
It's
infrastructure.
kind of, I think we discussed it once and you mentioned it in one of the meetings.
And I was
We-
like,
we
surely
thought that,
California
yeah.
government has governance
Yeah, you look it
PKI
up and
infrastructure.
yeah, there's,
Kinda
it actually is,
doesn't.
some old stuff when they were first discussing
Yeah.
digital signatures, but I don't think, the Secretary of State has ever, you know, done
It's
anything.
unfortunate because other governments do have like at least some kind of PKI infrastructure and.
But I guess my own personal recommendation would be that the government establish a completely separate certificate chain for election data.
Right, yeah.
So that you don't use like VeriSign or some other commercial organization to trust San Francisco Election Department. It should be,
Yeah.
codes that have a separate trusted security chain and authorization.
Yeah. Yeah, where like the Secretary of State's office is like the root of the trust chain.
Something like that, yeah. Or I mean, it could be the, Federal Election Commission or something that
Sure, yeah.
authorizes states or something.
And you
in
can
turn, but,
extend it up later too.
But for the time being, it would be the same authority that collects and,
Yeah.
already authenticates the paper data.
Yeah, agreed.
So, do you have comments on like what kind of document? I
So
should
just to
write?
clarify, like going back to like the signature stuff, the use case as I understand it is like signing like published election results materials and like
Well, it's
results, CDRs, that
everything.
kind of stuff.
So the software that you use, and I mean, ideally, when you create data, then you include the hash of the signature file of the software that you're using. So when you write data out, you also say which version of the software you're using.
Right.
So the data is signed data is also tied to signed, well, it's like through this equivalent blockchain where the software signatures are included with the data signatures. And it's also maybe more just for tracking changes, like which version of software was used to do what.
Right.
So if there's a bug or if there's something else, that's probably more important than actual security.
Yeah, but also getting signatures involved, I think, is a good thing. I would be supportive of you writing that up, and I'm also happy to review it before a meeting if you want to bounce it off me.
So, obviously blockchain is an important development. So my question is whether we should propose, essentially update what's been going on for years in terms of cryptographic security and advocate for a blockchain-based solution.
So actually I'm using blockchain in the literal meaning, not the, like say, specific implementations used by cryptocurrency, which is a different thing.
Well, but there's more than cryptocurrency with blockchain.
But, I mean, the whole thing of what blockchain means is you have a batch of data that's signed.
Yeah.
And then you have a new batch of data that's
Right.
signed, and the new batch of data includes the signature of the old data. So that means each new block of data secures the whole chain of prior blocks.
So you can trace the,
Well, also, if you have a signature that becomes compromised or invalidated in some older data, then if it's signed by new signatures, then the newer signatures
Supersede.
can re-secure all
Yeah.
of that data.
So you're saying you're proposing something that bears structural similarities to?
Well,
Well,
I asked,
some
at
is.
first, the first set is just to, I think maybe I should do it in a few sections. One is just to say, how do we sign piles of data
Mhm.
that include software, includes data files and log files? And so how do we create hashes of those, and how do we verify hashes? What software can we use?
Mhm.
And, maybe what commands for the software would work to create these detached signature files or authenticate them. Then another section would be on the more methodology of, if we want to make the software create log files that include the hashes and signatures of the software that was used, or input data that's used to create output data. And that if we have historical records, we want to include like the prior version hash or signatures when we make new versions. And so that's one for data revision, or just authenticating prior archives. So maybe there should be a discussion of how to do that sort of chaining of.
Cool, so I have some high-level suggestions for you. Like, one is, I would suggest, like, decoupling your different recommendations, so it's not just like one big ball of recommendations, but like, here's the thing about signing like a directory of files, here's the thing about certificates, here's the thing about hardware, whatever we want. So then it's sort of like each one's kind of an independent.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Also this sort of methodologies.
Yeah. And then another thing is, I would be interested, just from an educational perspective, for each thing, like say what are the assumptions we need for this to be known to work for what it's achieving. So like in the case of the signing stuff, like if someone like loses their key or something, does that mean that, are things still okay, or do you have to take a corrective action and things? So in other words, like what are you getting when you use these things? And then the other thing is, I would just say, maybe for the purposes of reviewing, it would be better to kind of start off with a higher level thing before you get too in the weeds.
Mhm.
So then if we get agreement on the higher level, we can say we're filling in more detail would help.
So you're saying, what did you call it now, like implications or something?
Well, I'd say, well, I'd say,
policy.
like, one is, like, what does this buy you, or what does this get you? And then also, like, what are the assumptions that, like, you're assuming that people are securely storing, what are the different things you need? So it's not just like a security theater thing where,
Mm-hmm.
does that make sense?
Yeah, would that be a separate section, or just like included with each one?
Well, I would think maybe for each section you could have a little like assumptions and the result.
and this would go into the recommendations document that's our living.
Well, we can decide that depending on how. I know at one point we were thinking like a glossary thing would be more appropriate for an appendix, but if it's recommendation, it could be like a technical recommendation or something. Or, I don't know.
Yeah, I think this would be short enough that
Okay.
it's a recommendation.
Yeah. Mhm.
The other stuff I wrote up is more sort of background tutorial type stuff, so seems more appendix
Yeah.
like.
But But, you know, I mean, the high level recommendation is to make sure that we have a way to have an encrypted, secure chain of,
Data and software.
data, yeah, exactly. And that doesn't require us to say how to do it, it just says we have to do it.
Like, are we recommending a particular implementation? In other words?
So, yeah, I guess I would separate out, there's some basic recommendations, and then in terms of requirements, and then we have like a suggested implementation of that.
Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I would caution you to avoid trying to create recommendations on operating a PKI, like any public key infrastructure, just because.
Oh, yeah, we have to punt on that.
Yeah, okay.
But the issue is, how do we deal, if we don't have a PKI, what do we do?
For sure, yeah, it's just like,
Well, it's
very
also
few
outside,
organi-
it's
Yeah.
also outside the scope, you know, of even San Francisco, the city of San Francisco.
But, you know, I think to add to Brandon's point, I don't think we wanna constrain whoever's building the system, overly constrain them and say, you gotta do it this way.
So I guess we have to make it clear what the requirements are versus a sample implementation.
Yeah, exactly.
Or what is the?
I mean, I even call it a
versus the
sample implementation,
Yeah,
or call it sample, you know.
sample way to fulfill it.
Right. Because, well, I mean, I actually think security should be part of the architectural design, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
important enough that it maybe even warrant its own
Yeah. It's one of the.
sub-project.
You know, I mean, if you go back to first principles in software engineering, you have this idea of what are my key non-functional requirements? What are the things that have to sit there independent of what the system does? And security is clearly.
But I mean, so we need a detailed design on, you know, how the whole open source voting is secured, and have that scrutinized by security experts.
Well, whether we're gonna do the detailed design. or
Well,
whether
I
we're gonna-
assume we're just recommending they do certain things.
Yeah, but we, within that context, we can identify certain principles that have to be followed, you know, to increase everybody's confidence about the security of the system, without saying you gotta use SHU 8256 or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
They'll deal with that problem.
Yeah, I think the overall recommendations of like cryptographic hashes of software available, potentially showing up in results, reproducible builds of software, like these sorts of general recommendations are good places to start.
And then with the sample separate from that. Yeah, okay.
Proof of concept, or reference implementation.
Okay, I want to give the public a chance to comment on this item, then we can continue our discussion further. Members of the public?
Brent Turner with California Association of Voting Officials. Not that it's a perfect segue, but we just wanted to make note that, as is predictable in this space, when we see that the most recent commissioner is from Stanford and has been on the board, I think, of OSET. This was predictable. We want to make sure that we're sticking with our initial concept of GPL, and because when I see 18F, not that they haven't done some good work, and I see OSET, and I'm recognizing all these new people showing up from Stanford, where David Dill and Verified Voting are located, it just makes me nervous about people coming in to try to nuance the system, nuance the licensing. That's what we've seen previous in other projects that have tanked. So these people come around, and then, like in Travis County, Texas, the project goes south because the RFP is written in a way which makes it impossible for people to respond. And I just want to everybody to be aware that even though it sounds like I'm being overly sensitive to these particular people, they have plagued the space, and so we're just hopeful that when we're addressing these issues, we're sticking true to GPL. That's the statement at this
Could you
time.
help me out here? Nuance is not a verb, and yet you've used it as such twice.
Oh, good.
Could
Thank you for the correction.
Hmm?
Thank you for the correction.
Well, I'd like to know what you actually meant rather than verbing a noun.
Well, from my layperson's understanding, once you get away from the GPL license, and of course, we defer to folks like Larry Rosen and Brian Fox.
Don't defer to Larry Rosen, please.
And Brian Fox, who's a stickler for GPL. But, you know, there's business interests that are, if they can't make sure that open source doesn't happen, then they'll attempt to what I say, to nuance it by driving it into a business direction and taking away the.
You can't
complete-
nuance it, it's not a
Okay,
verb.
this isn't what we're.
Thank
going
you
to
for the
items
grammatical.
about.
I don't know what he means.
Well, this, I mean, it's not.
Okay.
we
It's
don't need
also
to
not
have
on
a
the
dialogue.
topic of the
All right.
agenda.
What I'm meaning for a final statement is, there's business interests that would look to take the project away from a GPL project, and I think everybody's aware of these business interests. Thank you.
And I adjusted your time for interruptions. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
You have.
I'll go over if I need to, thank you.
Yeah, we shouldn't interrupt.
I'm sorry, I waited until it was done the first time and then.
Okay, members of the public, anyone else? Okay. Seeing none. Any other things to discuss in this item?
So I guess what will happen is Carl will write his thing.
Yeah, that's the,
So,
That's
yeah,
the
the
sort of
plan
outcome.
is to, I'll try to do it in the next week or two, email you, then we have a week or so to do some tweaks or whatever, and then, I'll try to send it to, Chris for inclusion in the next meeting's agenda.
Cool.
okay, sounds great. Okay, let's move on to the next item.
Item number 8, voting system component development discussion and possible action regarding OSVTAC developing and or facilitating the development of one or more voting system components as a proof of concept.
Okay, so, who would like to start on this item?
Well.
You or Carl?
To sort of restate, I didn't have it, I need about one more day of work to produce a final version of the data converted for the elections. But I did complete the ability to correlate all the IDs and found missing data in some of the DIMS EMS system. So I have to make some additions to that with fake IDs just to link everything together. But then it's pretty much ready for us to start putting that in. Also, I guess I'd encourage Roan to file some issues
Yes.
on the GitHub for the things that you mentioned. In
I found my list, I had lost my list and I found it back up this week, so
Okay.
I will do that shortly.
Well, I
Where's
just
the
think
audio?
it's,
Where's the audio?
Yeah, no, but I also found it.
it's not a big deal, but I think it's good to start using it just to encourage everyone to use that mechanism to raise issues, and then we can reply to it.
Can I ask you, Carl, when you said tying all the IDs together, is that like a single command that's automated, or is it more like a manual steps that you have to do to get that done?
Well, so we get data from the DFM system that contains the original contest candidate list. Then there's the remote accessible vote by mail ballots. And there's the RAVBM has, I think, 3 sets of IDs in it. The DFM has IDs, but they're all representing the contest. So if you're trying to correlate data between everything.
No, I just mean, but in practice, is it like you put the files in these certain locations and then run a command and then it all spits it out, or do you have to like manually jigger stuff?
Oh, no, well, you have to manually you have to put the files in. in a certain, you have to run a command basically that correlate the data files from one export to the other
So
export.
it's automated, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, then you have to make sure that everything matched.
Okay.
Because the only way to match things up is basically by candidate name, or in case of like measures or propositions, you have to customize a configuration file to put in.
Okay.
You have to put in certain patterns to recognize, so you have to customize the scanner so that it'll be able to recognize.
Which elections are you gonna have data for?
The November 2018 and also the primary.
Okay. Okay. I could talk about the meeting that we wanted to have, but I could talk about that later, we can talk about that now. Also, your project, I don't think you were here to talk about it in person, or we had started
Oh.
regarding that, some machine learning stuff.
Oh, yeah, I started just applying, some machine learning, to the optical, mark recognition. I haven't made much progress on that because I've been on vacation for the last 4 weeks. But then also I started working on the, getting the existing ORR code, into Kubernetes so that it can be easily like iterated on, from, static or like Git, data, so.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So if you have some suggestions on how we could use hashes and digital signatures
Yeah.
in that process, I could include that. I'm not sure, what you're planning in terms of, how things get staged onto Kubernetes, but if you could shoot me an email just with like some basic ideas on methodologies, and then how would we use hashes and signatures
Sure.
to sort of authenticate the chain.
Yeah, let me send you an email with the current best practices on how signatures are being used on like the container software side. That might help inform
Okay.
the thought.
And also, Brandon, since you may not have been here for a lot of the discussions about collaborating, but so that we don't infringe on the Sunshine Ordinance or the Brown Act, there are a few ways we can comply with those. And one is to, if we like agree during the meeting that someone should work on a particular thing, then they can do that, in public. Or alternatively, we can like meet as a special meeting, which I can talk about shortly. And then the third thing is you just like work privately, and or like 2 or fewer people work privately and just without communicating with the rest of the group. So those are kind of our options. And so we don't ever want to have like publicly discussing pull requests on the tracker.
Right, yeah. It also reminds me if anyone wants any issues filed, and it's also a good time to bring it up. Because what did we decide about, like the fact that we delegated all filing all those issues to me kind of suggests that we're not supposed to do that either?
No, we had, what was
Well, I guess we decide at a couple meetings ago when we listed all those issues that we were gonna file, whether it's okay for people to just like file tasks and to get a task tracker without going through a meeting first? I guess that might not be okay.
Well, I think we should only add issues during a meeting.
Are you talking about Git issues?
Yeah. But
So like if Roden he's trying to do something and has an issue with the ORR, he can't just post an issue, and I can't post a reply even though it's in the open?
no, because
No.
then then you're having like a majority discussion. You could talk privately about it, but what I'm saying is at the meeting where we talked about those issues, we had voted that these are all issues that we want to address, so it's okay to work on those because.
Yeah. Because, I mean, even if it's all in the open, there's not like 72 hours notice, there's not an opportunity for public comments, there's not
Well,
some of the other things.
but even if there were, it's still not.
It's still, yeah, but it doesn't meet a bunch of the requirements of the Brown Act.
But if it's something new, you can't discuss it on the tracker, but if it's something we've already voted on and it's just more of like, how do I get this thing working, it's okay to.
And what about posting replies?
I just think it's better to work privately, just because it
On the
creates an
replies?
appearance, no, just by email. I think we should only use the tracker for posting issues, and then when they're done, they can be closed or something. But I don't.
Well, but normally you wanna, like, okay, you post an issue that, we need this feature.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, oh, it's there, and here's how you use it.
Yeah, but I'm saying that we're not a normal group, though. We can't really do that process.
But we wanna post the reply and how to use it.
No, well, I'm saying you can do that by email. I'm just saying you don't want to be having discussions in
But
public.
I'm just saying, but people wanna be able to see how to, what the resolution of the issue is.
Yeah, the resolution of the issue will typically be like a patch, right?
Yeah.
Either I'll make an enhancement, or somebody will make an enhancement, and
Yeah.
then, or maybe you just, need to know, what to do.
Mhm.
Or, how it.
Well, I think most of the issues that we're filing are like tasks for us to do, right? Like we need to change something about the software, so when
Yeah,
that
or other things
is
are,
done.
some of the things you mentioned are already there, it's just a matter of explaining.
Right.
How to
Yeah,
accomplish it.
if you have a question about a task, I would work privately with the person that knows the answer, and then, I'm just saying, we
I
should be
think what Carl is
discussing-
referring to is there were questions that I had about how some of the code worked. And I don't remember off the top of my head the list of issues, but I think he's suggesting there are some issues in my list that are really just like questions of like clarifying the code, or like make a way for me to be able to do X, or like clarify the way that X is done. And then he's saying, how can I, like, if we agree that is an issue that we work on, how can I then like provide that clarification?
Well, are you saying to post the issue or to resolve the issue?
To resolve the issue.
Well, you wouldn't be the one to resolve that issue if you're
No.
the one that had the question.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Right, but he might be.
Then-
I think that's what he's asking.
then I think we would just privately decide, like, Carl, you can do that, Rick. And then I think the way the resolution would be adding to the documentation in the repository.
Right, yeah, I guess in most cases, you're gonna have, your resolution is gonna involve a commit to the repository. And then
So, yeah,
we can
of course,
just-
we haven't written
But-
any documentation yet.
But if it's like, I have a question, you don't.
About
need to
how to
post
do
it on
this,
the
yeah,
tracker.
yeah, that's fair. Okay, and then, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about, but do we wanna talk about the special meeting next?
Yeah, I actually had questions about your machine learning stuff.
Sure.
But, so at the last meeting, we had tentatively planned on having an optional meeting where we can actually work on code together.
Okay.
And, for like whatever, a couple hours at a cafe or something. And, the week before, though, I learned that, like, Carl, you couldn't attend the date that we had decided on, right?
Oh, I had some time limitations.
Yeah, so, and the other thing I learned is that it's actually kind of hard to organize a meeting during the weekend because City Hall is not open. And the other thing is that if we're gonna have it at a cafe, we still need to have the 72-hour notice.
Yeah.
And then we would need to get like the approval, and I'm not, like, weekends, cafes are usually busy.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is, if the cafe requires people to like purchase something, then that
Yeah,
could be
I
like
know.
an infringement on the.
So how about, I don't know if the San Francisco Library has
Yeah,
meeting rooms like.
they do.
I mean, I know like the libraries near me have little study rooms that would be.
I was
Yeah.
about to suggest the exact same thing, yeah.
Those, but we would need to make sure they're available though, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, you have to book those in
There's
advance.
public space in some of the downtown office buildings, but I don't know if they're available on the weekend, like 101 Second Street,
Mhm.
and LinkedIn has
Yeah,
public
I
space.
think, I know which building you're talking about. I think a lot of those in Soma are Monday through Friday though.
Yeah, well, not
It's-
sure.
Yeah.
But if anyone knows of locations that could work within those constraints,
Yeah,
that would help.
but my suggestion was gonna be a library conference room as well.
Mhm.
The I know I went to a meeting once at the Glen Park Library that was a meeting room about the size of this one.
Yeah. That's my local branch.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
So maybe Secretary Walker, maybe that's something that you could look into for us.
You're sure the building's closed on weekends? I thought that just the department's closed.
I asked Josh and he said that it was closed. I mean, even the two of you had trouble getting in.
Yeah, there was, this is a little bit before your time, but like right after the November election, they do like a random drawing for which precincts they're gonna audit. And they normally do it on like Thursday mornings or something, but they rescheduled it to a Saturday morning that time for some reason. And that's open to members of the public. So Tony and I tried to go and we got held up with security for like 15 minutes almost. Going like, okay, what are you guys doing here? It's a Sunday, why are you here? Or it's a Saturday, whatever. And by the time we actually got through that, they had already started. So they, I guess elections had maybe like forgotten to notify them that there was something going on the Saturday, but it also appeared like something that happens rarely enough that they were not, like the security people did not understand the notion of like letting members of the public into the building on a Saturday morning.
I mean, just need authorization, I think, but I'll look into
Yeah,
it.
you
Yeah,
could look
see.
into that.
But it seems like.
I've been to events in City Hall on the weekend.
Right.
So-
Yeah, I know like when there's big stuff going on, like, you know, the poll worker trainings, then,
I mean, not in this department. I've never worked for this department. I'm just
Right.
saying, as a city resident, I've been here on the weekend.
right.
But it also
Uh,
seems like the library is a good place to meet if they have a room.
Yeah, it's true. And there's a lot of libraries too.
Yeah.
Brandon, did you want to say, I know you started working on some stuff for the reporter. Are there, do you know what you have planned, or it's kind of open-ended? Or you're just getting this stuff working with?
Yeah, so what I've done so far is just get it running. I had some issue with finding some template files or something. I need to dig into that code. But I have it running under Kubernetes.
Okay.
And the last thing I want to do, and that'll pretty much finish the project, is add an optional piece that'll just automatically periodically pull from a Git repo of election data.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to ask too, like, Rowan, you, the
Mhm.
build, I think you broke the build at some point and then we
Oh,
would
did I?
fix that. And I noticed you were adding a badge, but,
Yeah, that's-
is the Travis one?
Oh, yeah, that's
not
right. I
working?
broke the building and I fixed it like within an hour or something, right?
Oh,
Or
you did?
maybe,
Build was
or maybe I
broken
didn't.
when
Yeah, it's still broken, but.
Oh, oops, in that
Was
case.
was the
maybe
one
it
that
was
you
me.
had, is that a different service that's?
That's just to build the container image, so
Okay.
it's publicly available.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, oh, so the machine learning thing, can you maybe describe what you have envisioned for that? Like, what is the input and output and?
Yeah, so the high level is like there's a bunch of open source projects that essentially just look for marked and unmarked pixels, which isn't super sophisticated, and also doesn't really help a lot for like San Francisco style, where you're trying to connect two lines. And so the input is training data, and I've been manually creating the training data by taking the sample data that we have in the Git repo and just marking what look like to me valid marks. And then once I get enough sample data, I got really hung up on getting the tools for doing optical marking running. But I have them running now, and I wrote the guide on how to get the tools running. And now, once I generate enough sample data, it's just a pretty straightforward process to have Google Cloud generate TensorFlow model, and then it just will mark the ballots automatically. And the way that I'm
Mark the ballots or
interpret the ballots, interpret the marks on the ballots, and then the way I envisioned that is just essentially outputting quadrants, and then somebody needs to take the quadrants and map those to the actual races.
Okay.
But it'll just be like, you know, left-hand column, mark 8 out of 19 or whatever, for like line 8 of it.
So my question for you is, in that case, since you kind of have to know the quadrants anyways, would it help to provide that as part of the input?
So initially, I'm just going, the model is just going to give you the quadrants of all marked and unmarked locations of a particular ballot. And then.
And you don't need any input of them.
Right.
So-
And the next step would be that you do the recognition on the ballot page number, and then those marked and unmarked locations get fuzzy matched to the actual races and choices. But the more difficult OCR task is just identifying marked and unmarked versus templatizing each page of the ballot.
Okay, so my question is, would detecting the marks be more robust if the software had as the input where the ovals are?
That's how a lot of the traditional software works. It just makes it so the scans have to be, it makes it a lot easier to make mistakes, in my opinion, because the scans have to be perfect and every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
So you're
but
saying
doesn't-
it could match marks even if you don't have, like, and so what do you mean by quadrant?
So like the algorithm essentially is just going to create bounding boxes around all marked or unmarked locations. So I'm creating training data that is, this is what a marked location is, this is what an unmarked location is, and this is what needs human interpretation location looks like. And then it's just going to essentially create bounding boxes for those. So the training data plus an input image is just going to create a bunch of bounding boxes. So it's going to be like, this is a unmarked location, this is a marked location, this is a marked location at XY coordinate. And then at some point, you just need to create a template input. It's like, this is page 6. And page 6, if around this XY coordinate, this bounding box location, it's race A and candidate 2, whatever.
So another clarifying question to try and suss out the difference. You're saying like you train a model to recognize like what an open arrow, closed arrow, or a doubtful arrow
Yes.
looks like, and then it's just like go look at this page and find a bunch of arrows.
Yes.
But you don't necessarily like. I think what Chris was suggesting is that like you know the ballot layout in advance.
Yes.
You could tell it like what all the ballot pages look like, and then go like fuzzy match this ballot layout, and now you know where all the arrow locations are.
Yeah, you need both.
Right.
The like existing software is really weird that I was researching, because it's essentially like you highlight XY coordinates for every single race on every single page. Like
Mhm.
the person has to do this by hand.
Yeah.
And then it says, you say like 80% of the pixels have to be black in order for this to be marked.
Yeah, you said threshold.
And,
Yeah.
but it feels like what you want is these are locations of where people could be putting marks, and
Mhm.
here's a robust model of what a mark looks like.
Right, but I guess for the former, like for identifying locations where marks could possibly appear, and like if a mark appears on the location, what does it mean?
Yeah.
Do you like use machine learning to find all the things that look like markable locations, or do you like give it a dictionary of like, if this is page 5, then this is where the markable locations are on page 5, and then it might be rotated a bit or shifted a bit, but you're generally going to be able to find it.
Yeah, so I think after you generate the model, you would say, here's the template. And
Oh,
the output, like,
okay.
it'd be like, this is where the marked locations are, and then some JSON blob that's going to go manually updates with the actual race information.
Right, okay, so you're saying you're going to train a machine learning model to identify markable locations.
Yes.
And then you're going to use that to like quickly generate the
like JSON
directory
blob.
of all the markable locations, and
And
then
it's
you'll.
just going to be like, some human has to fill that
Right,
out.
right,
So,
and
like-
then the human could also, and at least in theory, like if the model by chance does something completely ridiculous and weird, then a human could theoretically fix that as well.
Yes.
Right,
So-
okay. Yeah, I understand.
The idea being that over time, we want to create a really robust set of like objectively, like these are good marks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the concern that we had when we went down and we looked at the vote counting in progress last year. You know, there was a lot, it's very time consuming to deal with the ballots where they were not sure, they had to review them.
Right.
In a sense, it wasn't 100% marked, and you know, maybe somebody had doodled on the page or marked something that might have been marked twice. And so to the extent that the machine learning process can reduce the number of false positives or the like, you know, there's a real extra added value to doing that. And I don't know if it's feasible. It's probably too early days to know that.
Yeah,
So-
I think it would be nice though, if, like, over time, each elections office is able to keep a record of, like, these are what we deem as hesitation marks, or these are what we deem as
Right.
incorrect marks. And that actually helps to improve.
Because otherwise you have Florida 2000 with everybody sitting around the ballot and arguing over whether it's a vote.
So, I have a couple comments, related. One, there's several vote counting systems that are available now that involve scanning, but they score the marks in such a way that, you know, that they rank them so that you see, these are like, we think these are all clearly marked and these are like clearly unmarked. So you can just kind of zoom over all the ones that are marked and say, yeah, all these look, you know, like they're marked, and then you can focus
On the
just
gray
on the
area.
ones where
Yeah.
That might
it
be
looks a little
patented.
weird.
That might be patented.
It actually could be
That might be a
patented.
patented process.
Yeah, well, some of that is, and I'm not sure what's
But of course,
patented.
now you get into this ugly problem of, does it, you know, do you trust the machine to decide on these?
Well, the other thing is you're only looking at I've seen several systems that give you a grid of like all the marks,
Yeah.
so that you can, and they're sorted, so you can look, and then you can point to, you know, one of those, and then it'll show you the ballot, you know, the full thing, but,
Yeah.
you know, you're only seeing the mark.
But
and
I was
not
getting at a
the
different point,
context.
which is, you know, is there a point at which the machine solution is a better judge than a bunch of people sitting around staring at the paper ballot?
Well, I think that's what's interesting about having training data for machine learning. It's like, you actually have an objective judge of like, this is the data that we learned from, versus right now where it's like, here's some pixel threshold, which depends on the scanner, like the tone of the paper at the time, and there's just too many variables. Like the algorithms use the black and white the image.
So, Brandon, Humboldt County scanned like all the ballots and made it available for an independent audit. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
might be able to get the actual ballot scans from Humboldt
Okay.
for certain elections.
Okay.
I mean,
Yes, sir.
you know, you only have a few samples, and then if they're all done by you, that's a little different than,
I'm using the marked ballot samples that train our.
yeah, but there's only like a few of them.
Yeah, there's like-
So, whereas what you really want is 100,000 or something.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was just saying, Humboldt County might be a source.
Okay.
I mean, you
Do
can
they have
send
a
me.
similar system to ours?
It's hand marked, but it's a different brand.
Okay.
But there's a system called TEVS
Hmm.
that was used, and actually they discovered an error in the ballot counting system
Perfect.
with the independent audit, but, you know, they might not be doing it for current elections, but you might be able to get some DVDs
Okay.
of the scans from a prior election, just as practice data, you know, to tweak it. But, one thing I should mention, the OpenCount software, well, there's the problem that how do you know which location on the ballot belongs to which contest? So part of the system is setting it up, and the way they do it is they have some sort of ballot, you know, or the mark location detection, I'm not sure what algorithm they use, but
That's the one that uses just,
like
pixel
pixels,
counts.
so it like scans over and
Yeah.
tries to find a match, and then you by hand have to do it, and then it uses Tesseract OCR to try to,
Guess at the
to read the candidate names and contest
I see.
names and then associate that with that. But with the sample scans that they have with open count,
Yeah,
the scans are so poor that Tesseract can't OCR anything,
I
so
see.
it doesn't work.
I see.
But anyway, it's sort of a general issue, but if you start with PDF, then it's a little easier. But you have to correlate the locations of the contest names, and so the way I do the correlations, everything's based on candidate names.
I
You know,
see.
or mostly candidate names, because they spell the contest completely differently in one system from the other.
Mm.
And so the only way you can match up contests is by matching candidates. That's actually how my result scanners work. I have to match up the contests, and the only way I do it is by matching candidate, but even candidate names are not necessarily spelled the same.
Mm.
So it's a whole
Got it.
complex issue.
Okay.
But, you know, that's, I guess, a component in the whole thing is taking ballot layouts. Either if you construct it, then you can extract information on locations, you know, or if you don't have access to that system, then how do you take the, you know, PDF output or whatever, and then reconstruct those
Definitely.
locations back.
So I have just one question to clarify something. So with the utility tool you're working on, is the use case like you'll tell it, here are all of the boxes with ovals on this page, which of these have a mark in it? Or is it, here's a ballot with no other information, where are all the marks on it? Like, which of the two is it?
So the initial thing that I'm doing, so I have a project plan in the README that kind of outlines the steps I'm taking. The first step that I'm taking is, it will just say, these are the locations of marked marks, these are the locations of unmarked, and these are the locations that we're unsure, and that's it. And then the next step will have to be recognize a page number, and take in information on the layout, and say, this is a mark for this particular candidate.
Well, so I guess what I'm asking is, so it sounds like you're not taking as input, here are all the boxes on the ballot where a mark can go. It's not one of the inputs to it.
The input to, like, the data set I'm generating is, this is what a unmarked location looks like. So when the algorithm runs over the page, it has no idea what like, how many unmarked locations there are.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It will identify all the unmarked locations.
Now, then my question is, I think ideally, when we have our open source voting system, the ballots are gonna be generated programmatically.
Yes.
And we would be able to know, like, with certainty where all the bounding boxes are.
Yes.
And do you think that would result in a better training set if you can, or sorry, a better, more accurate process if you can tell the software, like, here are all the boxes, the unmarked boxes?
I think that you would definitely want to, like, throw an exception if you have boxes outside of where you expected them for a particular page. But I think breaking up the steps between mark identification and then layout is a reasonable first step to take.
Okay. All right. And then, okay.
So I can't remember what I was reading, but one of the articles I was reading discussed like all the ways people incorrectly mark ballots. Like they would put an X by the candidate name instead of marking in the oval or, you know, line, or they would circle it, or like all kinds of other things.
Cross one out and mark the other one.
Well, that too, but anyway, it was just discussing all the challenges, you know, for, you know, ballot reading, and also like what requires adjudication. And so, I mean, like the normal scanners only look like at that one spot
Exactly.
on the page, so they don't see X marked on the other one, so when we did our tour of the, that people looking at the ballots to see if they have, other kind of marking, but, I mean, a good ballot scanner will scan everything and then look for any extraneous or significant extraneous marks on the page. So I mean, actually, I was thinking about the whole issue is, I think the scanner it should try to align the scan image with a reference so that it, might make slight tweaks.
Yeah.
And then mask out all of the printed data, so that what you have left is just what's marked. And then you could see, are there significant marks somewhere else, or is it only in the legitimate areas? And then that would help the software be able to flag anything that's, maybe requires a person to look at.
Yeah, I guess,
It could also shrink the storage requirement, because if you take off all of the pre-printed material and compress it, then what's left is just the marks.
One thing that I was just curious about, I don't know if any of you know, while researching this, is there like legal definitions of marked versus unmarked, or is it just kind of up to commissions?
Yeah, the legal definition, I believe, comes down to voter intent.
Yeah.
So the adjudicators have to, put their, they have to decide, did the voter mean to mark this one or that one? So if they cross it or X it, it's whatever they think the voter meant when they wrote it. And if then I guess they'll disqualify it if they can't figure out their intent. But there was, I guess that's been subject to some lawsuits on races in contention where they had to decide, well, did the voter mean like cross it out, and they say, no, I meant to do this.
Right, and then that's what comes back to the point I made earlier about voter intent, is can a program do a better job of, evaluating user intent than a bunch of people sitting around arguing about it?
Well, and that's also, like, I think that you hit on something good earlier when you said, like, you want to classify marks as, like, not a mark is a mark, is something that needs human attention.
Right.
Because you want to be able to, like, you want the model to, like, be able to tell the difference between a mark that it should feel confident just saying, like, yeah, this is a mark, this is fine, this is just an everyday thing, versus, like, this looks weird, someone needs to adjudicate this. And you want to, like, you don't want to, I think that if this is like something that takes feedback of, like, when the mark gets adjudicated, then now you know what it was or not. Like, maybe the feedback isn't just like, was this a mark or was not a valid mark, but also, like, was this something that actually needed to be adjudicated by a human or not? Like, maybe the system made the right, or like tried to make the right or wrong decision, but like the decision of escalating it to the human might have been correct or incorrect. And I think that's also something that you want to keep knowing and getting better at.
Yeah, but you can also associate confidence levels with marks, so
Yeah.
that, if you have the 80% idea, right? So that you have, if 80% of that space is covered, then you may say, okay, I'm
Mhm.
100% confident that there was a mark here.
Yeah.
But, and at the other end, of course, there's 100% confidence that there's no mark here.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's this, gray area in the middle.
Well, also, I think it's trickier because you have to you really need to look at the mark in relation to the other marks. So like
But all I'm saying is that at some point, we're gonna delegate that task to computers, even though we like the idea of humans doing it. At some point, the machine is gonna say, there's an 80% chance that that's a mark, or an 80% chance that it isn't a mark. It's gonna give you, the human evaluator, its recommendation, and then.
So all I'm saying is, like, if somebody uses like a light pen and marks thin lines, and if somebody else marks really thick lines and then has like a thin line glitch or something, you have to interpret that differently. So what I'm saying is, what's a mark or not a mark isn't just like independent of,
But and you have people who are.
You actually have to compare the marks on that particular, elsewhere on that ballot, to be able to, to maybe decide whether it's marked or not marked.
Yep.
Because people might make it like a dot or something and it looks like a mark, but then they fill in the other one, so it clearly means they meant to mark the filled oval, and it's not an overvote because they put a dot on, the other
Right.
one.
And obviously there's some people who have disabilities of one sort or another that make it hard for them to consistently mark a ballot.
Okay, so in terms of the special meeting, raise your hand if you'd like to, or you don't have to raise your hand, just tell me, who would like to attend a working session, if you're able to? Okay.
I will.
Okay, and then, what works better for people, like weekends, is that what works better, or evenings and weekdays?
I'm sort of ambivalent about that, but it's finding a weekday evening that I can do is somewhat more difficult, but.
You're ambivalent about weekdays, you mean?
Ambivalent about weekdays versus weekends.
Oh, so you're not-
Or weeknights versus weekends, I can do either.
Okay, does anyone have a?
I think an afternoon and a weekend is fine for me.
Okay, yeah, on weekends, for anyone, is there like a clear preference for Saturday versus Sunday, or afternoon versus morning? Okay, that's good.
When Saturday mornings are booked.
Okay, so not Saturday morning, okay. All right, okay, so.
Oh, and the libraries are closed Sunday morning.
Okay.
That's
did-
not over, there are branches open on Sunday.
They're closed Sunday morning. They open at noon or 1 o'clock.
Oh.
Okay, did we take public comment on this item? I'm not sure if we have. Okay, let's take public comment on this item. Okay, seeing none. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? So Rowan, are you gonna try to fill out the track
Yes,
issues?
I will do the track issues today.
Oh, and I think last time you mentioned those CVRs, could you send a URL?
It's in the packet, actually.
Which packet?
And so under item 6, my diff,
Oh, okay.
my second diff
that-
links
Your
to-
reference is the.
Yeah, so
Okay,
my
so I
second
can
diff
go there
adds- yeah,
and find out all this stuff you were talking about.
exactly.
Okay, so are we okay with moving on?
And so for that one briefly, I recommend not getting lost in the state website, but just go to the GitHub repo, where they have the data in a JSON file. Because the state website publishes a dozen different things, only one of which is that, so don't get lost there.
Okay, so Secretary Walker, let's move on to the draft minutes item number 4, returning to an earlier.
So returning to item number 4, approval of minutes of previous meeting, discussion and possible action to approve minutes for the January 10th, 2019 committee meeting.
Okay, so thank you for running these off. This is the revised version, has the spelling error corrected, I think that you.
Yep, and the names of our members have gone from 2-letter abbreviations to full, member so-and-so. So those are the obvious changes.
I reviewed this earlier, and this looks good to me.
Yeah, I don't see any problems now. Those things I was concerned about have been edited. Thank you.
I didn't see any issues.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to approve?
Sure, so moved.
Seconded?
Okay. Moved by member Wasserman, seconded by member Cattell. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, Secretary Walker?
Do you typically do a roll call vote for all your items?
Yes.
Okay, just check. So, Chair Giordano,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cattell,
Yes.
Member Hague,
Yes.
Member Phillips,
Yes.
and Member Wasserman.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Okay, the next item, number 9.
Would be item 9, topics for future discussion. Discussion and possible action regarding topics for future discussion.
Okay, is there anything that we haven't mentioned earlier in the meeting that people can think of or would like to talk about at the next meeting, the future meeting? Okay, oh, and the CLAs, I still haven't gotten an answer back from the attorney, but when we do, we can have that on here. Okay, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, anything else for adjournment? Okay, then the time is 7:54 PM and the meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful rest of the Valentine's Day.